You're listening to Under the Shell Podcast, the best in America.
Welcome to Under the Shell, presented by Inside the Black and Gold. I'm Brendan YSL.
Sam Jane.
And Michael House.
Well, this week we're very pleased to have on probably one of the biggest influencers at Maryland Athletics. He's the new name of the Basketball Performance Center, Mega Booster Barry P. Gossett. Barry, thank you so much for hopping on to talk about the center and everything that you've done to help out the student athletes at Maryland.
Well, thanks. It's great to be with you guys.
Well, first off, let's just talk. How cool is it going to be for you when the public unveiling, and all the student athletes, the basketball players are really using the center? How cool is it going to be for you to kind of walk around and see your name on that sort of, big ground mark for Maryland to have that sort of center?
Well, it's great. I'm not one to be putting my name on a lot of things. That was all done by the athletic department. I didn't really request any of that, but nevertheless, that facility, we've had a chance to go through it while it was being constructed, and then about 2 weeks ago, got a chance to go through it. At that time, the women's group had just moved in, and had a chance to talk to Brenda and her assistants. On the other side, when the men's, they were like a day or two behind moving in, but I got to talk to the assistants there. Buzz was out recruiting, I guess. I didn't see him that day, but to see the student athletes and to see, in some instances, there were a couple of them around there, but they were just, I'm going to use the term, blown away by the facility, as was Brenda and what Buzz has told me. Buzz said he'd never been in his 35 years of coaching in a brand new facility, so he was really impressed with it. I think more importantly, the facility is something that facilitates, the activities that go on there. And I think when you have a great facility that was well designed, well built, and is really appreciated by the students and the coaches, because it really helps them play their game better, prepare for their games better. And in the long run, what really excites me about it, it helps prepare them for life. I know in my business, when I was hiring people, mostly salespeople, I always look for people that had played in some kind of a team sport, because in the team sports, you learn that there's somebody dependent on what you do, and you're dependent on what somebody else does. And life is like that. So the important thing to me is not only this center, but the GOSSETT Personal Enhancement Center helps people understand that, team sports is something that is a transferable skill for life, and that you can take it with you wherever you go. And it starts with just, sometimes I'll say boys club or girls club or something like that, or intramural sports. And it always enhances people that take it seriously, always enhances their ability to get along in life and to follow their their dream in terms of their employment role or whatever.
Hey, Barry. Thanks for joining us today. Obviously, the name of the game in college athletics right now, for a lot of it, is NIL and how much money a school can offer a player, a team. But with the brand new facility here for both Coach Freese and Coach Buzz Williams' teams, how much of an impact do you think that'll make when other recruits are looking at Maryland versus another Big Ten school or an SEC school or an ACC school? What do you think that impact is going to be?
Well, based on what they tell me, I mean, the coaches, I listen to them, that the prospective students, the prospective players are really very impressed to have something that recognizes them. Let's face it, most student athletes that are really good have a little bit of an ego. So when they see their name up there, or in the case of what I was shown in the locker rooms, there is a small TV basically over the top of each locker that the coach can say, Michael House, center, welcome from, wherever, East New Jersey, I don't know, wherever it is. But that's up there, and it has a little information about Michael House. And that seems to impress the kids a lot. And in addition to that, they don't have to go anywhere other than there for their weightlifting, their training, uh, their uh, hydro baths, the cooling baths. Everything is right there for them, as well as a lounge. Uh, and it's kind of a home away from home, and that's the way some of the students that I've talked to about it said. It's just, this is where we live, and this is where we like to be, and because of that and the closeness that they have with their academic support unit, it still is a house there or a home for them where they can relax, uh, practice, and then do some of their studies there as well as going to study hall.
Yeah. You said that you weren't, the one who decided for the performance center to have your name. I just want to know, how did that process come about then? Did the athletic department approach you and just be like, hey, we're building this new center? I'd imagine you'd probably given them a substantial donation, and then they decided to name it after you, or am I wrong in that assumption? Can you kind of just take us through what happened?
No, I think you're right. I mean, they came to me a couple of times. You have to understand, this thing started like 12 years ago. So, having been on the Board of Regents for almost 15 years and knowing that the university operation is probably slower than the federal government. But anyway, it just takes a long time. And there are processes that you have to go through. And a lot of times, I know, working with donors myself in the past, that it was important to some donors to have some kind of recognition of their name or their family. I'm not one to ask for recognition of my name. So, but what the process they had to go through was to submit my name to the Board of Regents, basically, and they check you out to make sure you're not somebody that is unworthy of having your name there and associated with it. So, did I request it? No, they just told me that's what they were going to do because of the contributions that I'd made, not only financially, but in terms of being involved with the school.
Right. And the basketball center, that's not the only place or thing on Maryland's campus that is named after you. Obviously, there's also the Barry and Mary GOSSETT Center for Academic and Personal Excellence. And then also the athletic director position is also named after you. Was that sort of a similar process to get those things named after you?
Yeah. They told me that's what they were going to do. I didn't object. So.
Right. For the people who don't know, what initially drew you into Maryland athletics to make you such a prominent figure right now with the sports programs?
Well, as I've told other people, I grew up down the road, literally down Baltimore Avenue from the university in Riverdale. It's called Riverdale Park now. It was Riverdale when I grew up there 100 years ago. But I started going to ushering at what was then called Byrd Stadium in 1951 when I was 11 years old as a Boy Scout. In the first 3 years that I was there, 51, 52, 53, the Boy Scouts were ushers. So I had the privilege of being an usher at Byrd Stadium. And, then seeing the Jim Tatum teams, which, were very championship teams. In fact, won the national championship in 1953. So I've just been hooked ever since, just as a little kid growing up. And then as I got more involved with the university, because the guy that I eventually went to work for, A.V. Williams in Baltimore, he was the 1917 graduate and football player of what was then the Maryland Agricultural College. So he got me involved back with the Terrapin Club in the early 70s, 71, 72, with Tom Fields and then with Jerry Claiborne. And so it's just, as they say, the rest is history. I just got involved and found that it was good for me to try to help somebody. And that's just the way I looked at it. And when you could see, and as Wallace Lowe had said a couple of times, and we had said this before, but athletics is kind of the front porch. So what goes on there reflects what could happen on the academic side and the research side and everything else that happens at the university. So, and it's just a great place as far as I'm concerned.
For the people who don't know, can you just kind of describe, because I would imagine just random students and people walk around and they're just like, who is this Gossett guy? Like, none of us, you don't know who he is. You don't make a ton of public appearances. Why do you think you've had so much influence and kind of, um, notable, like Mike said, notable places and connections within the Maryland campus? Can you just describe to what a casual fan might not know, what you kind of do?
I just try to help where I can. um, when I was invited to join the Board of Regents, it was because I had some ideas that I expressed to uh, the people that were on the foundation at the time and other people that I had met and friends. Jim Clark had become a friend, and uh, later on when when Dan Moat was hired, and they had asked me to be on the search committee for that. So it was just this kind of mutual respect, I guess, I had for a lot of people, and perhaps they had for me. And then they asked me to serve on a number of committees, onto Dan's, I call it kitchen cabinet, build relationships with people. That's what I liked to do, and try to see that, using my business background. I'm a CPA by profession, so I was in that role for 7 years before I went to work for Mr. Williams in Baltimore, and then just continuing for 33 years in Baltimore, building relationships with customers, and building the company so it became a nationwide company. Um, so I just guess that, I'm somebody who kind of likes to be behind the scenes as opposed to out front, and support where I can. Uh, there's enough credit to go around when you're successful, and I don't look for credit a lot of times. I look for results, and look for smiling faces on student athletes that accomplish what they want, but more importantly, accomplish what they want after they graduate and after their athletic careers. Um, it's more important. I know one lady basketball player who I talked with a number of times, and she kept saying she wanted to go to medical school. So I introduced her to the then president of the University of Maryland, Baltimore, who also happened to be a pediatrician, what she wanted to be. So that kind of connection, and she ended up going to the University of Maryland, Baltimore, and she's now a pediatrician working in the Midwest. So I don't hear from her that often, but it's always a good time to hear from people like that, and that's just one example of success stories that people have enjoyed as a result of their time at Maryland and their education they received there, the education on the court or on the field as well as in the classroom.
I mentioned it a little bit earlier right now, but the landscape of college sports right now is always evolving. There's been a lot of changes in recent years. The same kind of goes for Maryland athletics right now. There's a new athletic director in with Jim Smith, sort of the unconventional athletic director hire that Maryland had made this past year. When you're looking at the future of Maryland athletics in the next 5 to 10 years, kind of where do you want to see them headed, and what's your vision that you hope to see happen?
Well, I work with a lot of athletic directors, I guess, starting with Debbie Yao, and worked with a number of them, Kevin Anderson and Damon. And Damon and I became good friends, but it was time for a change, so to speak. So, and things were happening with the men's basketball program at the time. So when he left, and I talked to Dr. Pines about the type of person that we wanted to find, and he and I were on the same page. He was leading it a lot more than I was. That we needed a non-conventional athletic director simply because of what you said, the way college athletics was changing from, trying to let NIL, meaning let somebody, as I always described it, have a summer job in athletics. They could go to Bentley's or they could go to the car dealer and sign autographs or whatever. And then it morphed into pay for play with no sheriff in town. Uh, and in order to compete, uh, we had to have somebody who had a different vision than just sort of the typical athletic directors, hire good coaches and so forth and so on. And I think that Jim Smith is really a wonderful individual, a wonderful human being, and somebody that everybody can really look up to once you get to know him. And and we've become fairly close in a short period of time, talking a lot. So my vision is somewhat the same as his because, while I don't like to use the term farm team or, minor league or what have you when they get paid, but I still think the college athletic scene, even though NIL has tainted it to some degree, to me, in my opinion, it still is a place where people get an education first, and even if they get paid, and there's a lot of legal things going on about whether employees or not employees, but um, you know, they get paid, but they have to be enrolled in school and they have to be a full-time student. So they have to take that seriously, and if they want to continue to play. Now, there's always ways to get around some of those things, and some people do that just to use the system. Understand that, but we try to limit that where we can. So the vision that I would have, and I would think I share it with a lot of people, is that we have sort of a regulations now, and I hate government regulations, but this is what we need to do because if there are certain, I mean, the professional teams have salary caps, so it's almost the same way that you have to be fair with people. Why should one person get $50 and one person get $5,000 for somewhat doing the same thing, unless there is that much of a difference in their ability to do something? Uh, we tend to say, okay, every right tackle should get paid $100 or something like that, and that's not the case when you look at the ability of somebody who is quote a right tackle. Uh, so I really think going forward, um, there has to be some balance and some uh, regulations that you have to follow in terms of rewarding student athletes for the things they've done, not the things they're going to do. And I think that's what it'll evolve in. And then with that, we've always had issues with raising money with Maryland. This has really bugged me a long time. Every time I invite people to a ball game, the first thing they would ask me is who's they're playing. I say, and if they were playing, our opponent this week, they would say, well, maybe not. But if we were playing USC, oh yeah, I'll come because they want to look at the other team. I mean, I remember when Alabama came, and we had, I don't know, 60,000 people with temporary stands at Burt Stadium, and we've had some big turnouts with Penn State. So, and they're saying, it's just Maryland. Oh, well, why? They say, why Maryland? Well, why not Maryland? Why can't we be, and we should be, in the top half of the Big Ten? We're as good as any of those people. I believe that. I think Jim believes that. I think Daryl believes that. Now we just have to put this into action and sell that. And I think we've got a target-rich environment of things that are happening at the university, not only with athletics, but with all of the schools and colleges and research that's going on there. In my time on the Regents, I got to know most of the deans there. And I look at Dr. Pines and our provost, Jennifer Rice, and I think they are the right people to lead the institution and can get the support from the athletic department to really make sure that the front porch really leads to a great inside where we have a wonderful university that is nationally ranked in many areas, and I think that's the vision that they've got to elevate that university and the athletic department uh, by getting more people in the stands, more support from the business community, more support from other individuals can help increase the university's presence to what it really should be in the national scene.
Last question I have for you, Barry, is Maryland's, you talked about fundraising. Maryland's revenue is near the bottom of the Big Ten.
Yep.
Obviously, Buzz Williams just got paid. Mike Loxley is under contract, and his buyout would be pretty substantial if something were to happen there. I guess I just want to know from a financial perspective, knowing other boosters and talking kind of around the university, what do you feel like the overall health of the financial status of the athletic department is, and what is your kind of number one way to really rectify the kind of bottom of the barrel that Maryland currently sits at?
Well, I think it'll take some time to get us up to the middle and then toward the top of the Big Ten in terms of fundraising. And of course, it always depends on a lot of the winning combinations, winning games, and so forth. So, I think as the Green Bay Packer Vince Lombardi coach said, at one time, winning isn't the only thing. Then somebody said isn't everything. It's the only thing. I think in my estimation of that, being able to win or being competitive, and when you go to a game, you expect Maryland, whatever team is, that they'll be competitive enough that they can win the game. That's, I think, when we get to that point, then you'll garner more support from not only loyal alumni, loyal friends, but you'll be able to get the business community and some national recognition. So you get some support from people because everybody likes to support a winner. Nobody likes to support people who are down and out to some degree, because most people that are down and out don't want to help themselves. We want to help ourselves. We want to make sure Maryland puts the best product not only academically in the world but on the field. And so that's going to take some time, and it's going to take some salesmanship. But I think we can do that in the next 5 to 10 years. We can grossly elevate our position because we have a good product to sell. We have great coaches. And I think with the facilities, we'll get, really good people. The Jones Hill House is an example of probably it's not the best, one of the best in the Big Ten. And the same thing with our Xfinity and Basketball Performance Center now. And then there are the other Olympic coaches or teams, will be able to improve their facilities too. Because the other thing is, Jim Smith and I have talked about, okay, how do we finance these things and how do we do it going forward? And it's not like you have to wait until you get $40 million in the bank to build something. You have to have some support from the athletic department in terms of if it's going to be an athletic facility, in the cash flow that's coming in, that you can borrow the money to pay it. I mean, when you're new and you just married, so to speak, and you buy a house, if it costs $200,000, if you're going to wait to get $200,000 in the bank, you'll probably never get that house. So, but it's based on your earning capacity. Same thing with us. We can get a better earning capacity because we've got a better team to put on the field, and we got better leadership.
Well, that's a good way to cap it off. Barry, we really, really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for hopping on. Congratulations on the new facility. I know that's a big deal to you and the university. So it looks great, and I'm sure that student athletes are going to really appreciate it. So thanks again for hopping on.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Before we get back to the show and a preview of Maryland, Wisconsin, a quick word from our sponsor. The catalyst to the game is brought to you by Catalyst Hot Dogs. Catalyst brought the Jersey dog to the DMV, featuring premium dry-aged Black Angus all-beef hot dogs made in Maryland, served with handmade toppings including hot onions, relish, and their signature Texas chili sauce. And don't miss their original garlic knot dogs either. Those things are fantastic. Catalyst always offers vegan dogs as well with gluten-free buns, because Catalyst has food for everyone, including one of our co-hosts, Brendan Weissel, who's a big-time gluten-free guy. Find them in CQ Stadium in Section 14 and the Xfinity Center in Section 210. Tell the people, a hot dog is a sandwich. All right, now here's more from Under the Shell.
All right, we're sitting right now pretty much exactly where we thought Maryland football would be 3 weeks into the season. 3-0, and they have a massive opportunity to get a win in Wisconsin. But I will say, I'm way more optimistic about this game than I think I was at the start of the season, because honestly, I'm more optimistic about Maryland's chances just because they've looked good and Wisconsin has not.
Yeah, well, let's just talk about what the two teams have done so far. Maryland, obviously 3-0, as we all know. We'll quickly touch on the Towson game. Good win. Malik, that was his best game, obviously. Mike, you were there. Just give us kind of 3 quick hitters on the big takeaways from the win over the Tigers.
I mean, it is really hard to pick a takeaway just because Towson is an FCS school and Maryland handled them pretty easily. By the end of the first quarter, you said, all right, you can tell Maryland's going to win this game. But Malik looked good. He looked composed. He did throw his first interception, but all day he was really slinging the ball around. The running game also looked good against Towson. Again,
Towson is not that big of competition for Maryland, so I don't know how much you can take from that game. And then the defense looked pretty good. They added a pick six. That's the second defensive touchdown for the Terps this year. So it's going to be interesting to see what carries into the Wisconsin game.
Meanwhile, the Badgers are 2-1. They beat Ohio and Middle Tennessee to start the year. Obviously, the story from those kind of early season games, Billy Edwards injured on one of the first drives of the season against Ohio, suffered a non-contact knee injury. It looked worse than I think what the diagnosis ended up actually being. He was questionable for the past 2 games, did not play in their recent game against Alabama, and the Tide rolled. They absolutely destroyed Wisconsin, threw the ball all over the yard, over 300 yards passing, 4 touchdowns from Bama quarterback Ty Simpson. It was a dominating effort by the Crimson Tide, who I think really showed what the concerns are with this Wisconsin team. The offensive line got mauled at the line of scrimmage, and then defensively, if you're able to throw the ball effectively against this team, I think there are some weaknesses there that you can exploit. And Luke Fickell's seat, I think, we talked to Wisconsin people in the offseason, already hot, and now enter a critical home game. Just some statistical overviews of the Badgers. Their offense averaging around 24 points a game. That's good for 72nd in the country. But the yards per game is even worse, 330th, which is 94th in the country. And the one spot that they have been really good in offensively is they've been solid running the football. You're looking at, around 4 yards a carry, and you're looking at a decent amount of rush attempts per game. So they're clearly wanting to rely on their run game, especially with, your backup quarterback in there. And they've also been really decent on third down. They have a 50% third down conversion rate, which is good for 19th in the country. That's the offense. Some key players to highlight. Obviously, Edwards is going to be one of the biggest question marks in this game. If he plays, which, Mike, I would guess that he probably is. He's listed as questionable. I would doubt that he missed this type of game. What would you put the percentage at that Billy gives it a go?
I'd put it around 50-50. I talked to a friend of the show, Raheev, today, who said that it's still a mystery for the people down in Wisconsin. His guess was that he's not going to play, but obviously the Wisconsin fans are hoping he will, and he is listed as available right now.
Yeah, I think just my general take on Billy playing is Maryland knows exactly who he is, and I think it actually, if Billy plays, that's an advantage for Wisconsin, just because I believe he's better than their backup or guy who started the last 2 games. But I do think Maryland has the edge just because Maryland knows Billy's style, obviously is in the system, know him very well. And on the defensive side, the coordinators changed. There's a lot of overhaul in the defense. So I just don't think Billy will have quite as big of an advantage as people may think against his former team. Maybe there's some other optics things there. He's very fired up to play Maryland. But at the end of the day, him playing, I don't see it impacting this game in a massive way.
Yeah. Some other guys just to watch out for. The running back, Dylan Jones, he's been their leading rusher. He's actually from Maryland, a freshman from Laurel. Was negated pretty much in the Alabama game. He kind of shares the backfield with Darian Dupree. So those will be the 2 guys getting the main touches. And then receivers, Jaden Ballard's had a really, really good start to the year. He's up to 141 yards. And then their tight end, Wisconsin always turns out really good tight ends. Lance Mason is another one. He's a guy, he's got some vertical athleticism, but as a senior, who's gonna be a good blocker. He's gonna be able to catch the ball underneath. He's up to 132 yards in the year. So those are offensively the guys that I would look at. Mike, in this game, what do you think stands out to you about Maryland's defense against the Badgers' offense? Let's say if Edwards were to play, assuming that potential, what's a matchup you're looking for to kind of determine how that side of the ball will go?
Yeah, I mean, if Edwards is playing against Maryland, you just kind of listed it out. He knows this defense knows him. They played against each other nearly every single day last year in practice. But I worry about the availability of Edwards as in how ready is he for this game. He only played less than a half of football in the opener against Miami, Ohio. Malik Washington has played 3 straight games. I know this is his first road game in college, but Edwards has barely played this year, and this is a Maryland defensive line which has been getting in the backfield every single game for the Terps this year. You have that young duo on the edges of Zahir Mathis and Sidney Stewart for the Terps, who've been playing really well. Sidney Stewart has a sack every single game for Maryland. Same thing with Zahir Mathis. So you mentioned the shaky O-line playing against O-line play against Alabama, Sam. You know, you hope if you're a Maryland fan that the defensive line play that you've seen through the first 3 games can translate into Madison.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a really good point. I also look at the defensive line against the offensive line. And I look more specifically, though, at the run defense, because I think if Maryland can get Wisconsin into third and longs and really prevent them from establishing, the single back I-form run game that they want to get going, that's going to put them in a way better spot in terms of their defensive game plan, because then you'll allow, Zahir Mathis, Sidney Stewart, those guys to really to feast. Alabama had 4 sacks last week. And that really just kind of defensively, the way they got that, they allowed 2.7 yards per carry on the ground. If Maryland can replicate that or emulate it in some sort of sense, I really, really like this defense's chance to kind of keep Wisconsin contained, because we do know that their secondary is improved. And if the run defense, which has struggled at points this year, Brendan, last week you pointed out the big run against Northern Illinois, if they can limit just the down-to-down run game that Wisconsin has, I think that they're in a decent spot defensively.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, as it all shakes up, I don't think people thought that Maryland would have this good of a chance going into the Wisconsin game. Is that classic overhype because Loxley's very good out of conference in terms of, doesn't necessarily play the toughest opponents, but it's a fact he's been very good out of conference. And so, this point in the season, every single year, like clockwork, Maryland's usually undefeated in conference, and they go play their first Big Ten game, and it says a lot. This could be a very big game for Maryland's program. 7-point underdogs, which I think is probably a little bit too much in a game where Wisconsin it's not necessarily a must win for them, but if you know anything about their schedule, if they want to make a bowl game at this point, they pretty much have to beat Maryland, and so I think the optics favor the Terps because it's a big game for Wisconsin, and as you said, Fickell's a bit of a bumpy seat there. So Maryland has a chance to do a lot of damage, but I just don't see it happening personally.
Well, Brendan's given you the full prediction. I'm going to move over to the offensive side where I think he's talking about it's a big game for the program. I think this is a huge game for Malik Washington. Mike, you've kind of singled that out from the beginning of this season, that you had this one circled as Malik's chance to really kind of establish himself. The Badgers defense, I think, offers some holes that he can potentially exploit. Their rushing defense is incredible. It's one of the best in the country. They, are top 5 in yards per carry, top 5 in overall rushing yard defense. And their secondary is a little more leaky. We talked about how Alabama absolutely tossed the ball over the yard. Ty Simpson, listen to the stat line. 24 for 29, 382 yards passing for 4 touchdowns. That is ridiculously good game from Simpson and Bama, who kind of struggled a little bit offensively at points. So I think Washington has a chance to really be able to throw the ball. I don't think Maryland's going to be able to run the rock, personally. So I think that this game's ultimately going to fall down on the shoulders of the true freshman. Which, and Mike, at this point, do you agree with that statement? And what do you think he's going to do if that kind of game script ends up happening?
Yeah, if you look at the Terps' 3 games so far this season, every single one of them has honestly been in Washington's hands as well. So I don't think this is a new situation for the Terps. Just a side note, he's going to be the first true freshman for Maryland to start in a conference game since 2016. He has the chance to be the first to win a conference game since 2012 for Maryland. So this is a massive game for Washington and the Terps. And we've mentioned it a couple times, but it's really hard to kind of predict what is going to happen this game because the toughest team that Maryland's played so far is Northern Illinois, and Wisconsin has played Alabama. So you've got a tale of 2 different teams who have played 2 different schedules so far, injuries involved for both. But yeah, I would agree that the ball is going to be in Washington's hands for the majority of the game, and if the Terps want to win, the freshman's going to have to make some plays in crunch time for them to win. I don't think this is going to be a blowout for Maryland by any means. It's going to be a game where Washington has to have that big drive, those big 2 drives late in the game for Maryland to be able to come out with a victory.
Definitely. This is going to be their closest game they've played, and it'll be interesting to respond. And that's the final question I want to pose to our vibes guy on the pod, Brendan. We've talked a lot about stats, but Washington is also walking into his first true road start of college career. We've seen freshmen struggle in those environments. Bryce Underwood, Oklahoma is a much different caliber of team than Wisconsin, but that was a very much a struggle fest for Underwood. Wisconsin's known for having really elite environments. How well do you think Washington's going to handle that, and how much of an impact do you think the jump around and the Badger faithful might have on this sort of game?
It's a tough thing to estimate because he's looked so good, but he's also looked so good at home when it's easy to be composed, when you know that you have fans behind you, but also have if you make a mistake, you're probably still going to win that game. I will say I think the first couple drives of this game for Malik matter a ton. If he's throwing good balls, wide receivers are catching passes. If Maryland scores on their first drive of the game, I think they build momentum and give him a lot of confidence. I think if he first 3 drives goes 3 and out, the first 3, they try to run the ball, they don't really trust him. Then it's gonna be tough. I do think those first couple drives matter a lot, and I think what you said is really important. Wisconsin has an incredible rush defense, and Pep Hamilton's gonna have to trust Malik's arm, and if he doesn't to start the game, I just don't see there being a positive outcome from Maryland. I think that it would be a smarter approach to let Washington maybe throw an interception, but play more aggressive in this game, just because of how poor Maryland's been on the road when they are underdogs.
Yeah, I think I agree with that fully. I think you got to let the freshman rip it. I mean, that's really the only viable path I see Maryland winning this game, right? They're not going to be able to run on Wisconsin. I mean, I'd be stunned if they were able to rush the ball in Wisconsin. They have to let Washington eat, and we'll see if he's able to do it. It's going to be a fascinating game to watch. Super interesting stuff this Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, just to build off Brendan's point there, if they spend the first quarter trying to establish the run and offense is just stagnant, they're going to fall into a 14-0 hole early, and that game can become a blowout real quick for Maryland. So, like you guys said, they have to trust Washington to pass the ball.
With this all being said, I think if we want to give our predictions now for score, I think this shakes out to be a pretty low-scoring game. Weather isn't looking great. Some chance of rain in Madison, so doesn't necessarily help the pass there. I think it's a low-scoring game. I think Wisconsin's going to win just for the fact that how Maryland has historically looked under Loxley on the road when they're not favored, and even when they are favored. And Camp Randall's a tough place to play. I will take Wisconsin 17-10.
Mike, you go next.
I will, man, I've been thinking about this game for the past few weeks now. This is hard to make a pick. You know what? I'm going to take the Terps 21-17. I think they can get it done in Madison, no matter who is starting for Wisconsin.
Yeah. So I've kind of been in the Wisconsin's going to win this game camp pretty much all the lead up to this season. I will say there's a lot of me wants to just take Maryland because I think Washington is a very talented quarterback, and I think their secondaries looked better than I expected, while Wisconsin's offense has looked worse than I thought it might. But at the end of the day, I just can't pick a true freshman in their first college road start playing against a team that's not going to let you run the ball. I mean, that just screams to me like it's going to be a really tough environment. It might rain, as Brendan pointed out. So as much as I think that Maryland has a legitimate chance to winning this game, way more than what I would have thought, I really think it's kind of a coin flip in my eyes. The spread is way too high, in my opinion. I'm going to take Wisconsin 20-17. I think it's a late field goal that gives the Badgers the win, but I would not be surprised. Here, I'll put in a little condition. If Malik Washington throws for more than 250 yards, Maryland wins the game. So that's my little
What about if Shalik Knotts has more than 100 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns, and it's a prove Sam Jane wrong type of game?
If Shalik Knotts does that, I will officially come on this podcast and say that he is no longer a year away from being a year away. He's here. He's here. There we go. So
maybe he'll even be the terrific Terp if he does that.
Exactly. But really interesting game to watch. You can catch that noon Eastern time this weekend. Mike will be there with all of your coverage, so follow along for his awesome stuff that'll be coming out of that game for sure. Let's move off of football. Obviously, that's the game of the week. We spent the most time on it. But there was another team that played Wisconsin this week. The men's soccer team. Big 3-1 win on Friday. Kind of a close game throughout, but eventually Maryland took over in the late game. Ritarita continues to excel. He's been
Greatest
one of the
name in
best.
sports.
Yeah, I mean, elite name. He's been one of the best freshmen in the Big Ten early on, and this was kind of really he had another breakout game. Maryland continued to be undefeated. I really like this team. I think they're putting together some really quality wins. You're starting to see the talent that's shining through with the young players and some of the international guys really establishing themselves. Brendan, they play Pitt this upcoming week. What are you kind of looking at for Sorosky's team before they really start to get in the swing of Big Ten play? Anything that stood out to you or that you want to see continue to improve?
Yeah, I mean, the midfield has looked great. Rocket Rita, as you mentioned, had a very solid game. This team has looked very good. I mean, in pretty much every contest, they've hung with every team. They've played some poor opponents, but the Georgetown game, the Wake Forest game that got canceled, the Wisconsin game. I mean, pretty much for all those games, they've looked like the better team out there. Georgetown got a little bit lucky with the play, or Maryland got lucky in that game because of the play of Lauren Mack. But I think all in all, this team has looked extremely solid. And honestly, the only thing that scares me about the Pitt game is that it's a very, very nothing game where you already started Big Ten play. You're going to play a Pitt team that they're 3-3. They have not looked incredible this season. So I think Maryland gets the win, but it's a classic like home game, but it doesn't, because Big Ten play has already started, it's more in the back of your mind. I expect Maryland to win this game as well. Just the way Mac has looked and the way the offense have looked, they've been generating a lot of chances. So yeah, I would take them. What are your thoughts on the fact that, well, I guess the new rankings haven't come out yet for men's soccer, so we'll scrap that. But they still haven't been ranked. I would expect Maryland to get ranked in the upcoming week's poll that will come out they'll come out. Once this podcast is out, those rankings will be already been released. But I would expect Maryland to be ranked. They've looked very solid, and the goalkeeper play is gonna elevate them, as I mentioned.
Definitely, I think that Maryland will be ranked. I think they're probably going to be one of the top teams at the Big Ten. We could say the opposite for Maryland women's soccer. Again, continue to be cellar dwellers. They played their first Big Ten game against Penn State, and I think it went the way that a lot of us expected. We like Michael Marciano as coach. I think that, he's a friend of the program, and I think he's got the right idea in place, but this is still a team lacking a lot of talent. Brendan, just really quick, how many games do you think it'll be until Maryland women's soccer gets their first conference win this year?
Probably 2. They have 2 really, really good chances this weekend. Indiana and Purdue, both also kind of bottom dwellers in that Big Ten for women's soccer. Both games at home, Thursday, Sunday. Maryland doesn't have to win one of these. They got to be competitive. They got to at least get a draw. It's early in Big Ten play, and so it's not the end-all, be-all. But I think for the momentum and confidence of this program before they head out west to face USC and UCLA, which is just a tough road trip and teams to play, beating one of those teams from Indiana would be huge for the confidence of this team. And neither of them have looked that great all year. Neither of them have historically very good women's soccer programs. So I actually expect them to be competitive. Maybe not get a win, as you mentioned, but tie or be very competitive in one of those games. I will say, I want to just put in perspective, what Marciano's trying to do. We've talked about it, but Maryland all-time, their women's soccer program started in 1987. Only 5 of those seasons have ever come with a winning record, and none of those have been in the Big Ten. I don't think they're going to be able to get that done this year, but you have to just understand the perspective that this team is coming from. They can get 2 or 3 Big Ten wins, even some draws against some quality opponents. That's positive momentum for this team, which Marciano is going to hope to build on this weekend. It's pretty much all I got about women's soccer. Mike, field hockey, what's going on?
Yeah, we mentioned their struggles against ranked opponents last weekend. They were able to get a win over number 13 St. Joseph's the past weekend. They're going to have some more ranked bouts coming up this upcoming weekend. So they got number 17 Penn State and number 7 Michigan later this week. Again, I just want to reiterate, it's very important for the Terps to win these ranked games because it builds over half of their schedule with how competitive the Big Ten field hockey is. So good that they were able to get a win over St. Joseph's, and then, league games against Penn State and Michigan, even more important for them to take those.
Yeah, they need to have a 2-0 week, I would say. Big slate up here for Missy Maharg's team. That's it for Well, volleyball. I keep forgetting about volleyball. They beat Davidson in a 3-2 win and also beat Delaware State. But then they lost to Wake Forest, which ended their 5-game winning streak. They fell to the Deacon Demons in a 3-1 loss. Real quick, shout out Ajak Maluel. She's a transfer from Tennessee, and she's been really, really good to start the year. She had 21 kills, a career high against Wake last week. And I just think really overall has been one of the top Terps offensive players that we've seen in a while. So really nice pickup in the portal from Adam Hughes, especially considering Maluel took a couple years off from volleyball. So really, really nice addition. Maybe a future Under the Shell guest that we could have on for volleyball has a really cool story. So we'll see about that. But that's it for fall sports recaps. Let's go to our picks. Michael Howes has fallen off a wagon. Another 1-2 week from him. He's dropped to 5 and yeah, but you're in last place.
Whatever, dude.
I went 2-1. So Brendan is roaring hot, and I'm in the middle of the pack. So
what's your record here, Sam?
He is also 5-4.
The advantage because I went 2-1 last week. We'll start with the guy who had arguably the best week last week. Brendan had a good week too, but I'm going to go with Michigan -2.5 versus Nebraska. The Wolverines looked really good last week. I think they take the road win against the Cornhuskers. Then I'm going to go to Tennessee -37.5 versus UAB. Brendan, that game against the Bulldogs, that was just a brutal way to lose a rivalry game. They continue to do that. So I think Tennessee's going to bounce back and kind of take out their anger. And then a big game, Oklahoma -6.5 versus Auburn. Jackson Arnold, Auburn's quarterback's facing his old team. I think he's going to stink it up. I'll take the Sooners to roll.
Yeah, that's an interesting game. Oklahoma being in the SEC always just tickles my brain. I've got Texas figured out, but Oklahoma, I always do a double take. I'll do my picks. I'm 7-2. I'm feeling pretty good about that. I'll take Iowa -2.5 against Rutgers. Hopefully there's even 3 points scored in that game. Nebraska 2.5 against Michigan. And hell, I love the number 2.5, so I give you one more. Illinois +2.5 against Indiana.
All Big Ten this week from B Wizzy.
Hey, don't go far what you know. I know the Big Ten. Well, what's that? What's the point of trying to pick a, Iowa UMass game?
I'm gonna stick with the Terps for my picks. We mentioned it earlier. We all think this is gonna be a pretty close game with Wisconsin. Right now, Maryland is 8.5-point underdogs against the Badgers. I like that line, so I'm gonna do Maryland 8.5 dogs. I'm also gonna do Notre Dame favored by 26.5 over Purdue. They just lost a really tough one the past weekend that me and Sam watched. I think they're gonna bounce back. I don't think, starting the season 0-3, that's not going to happen, but I think they're also going to blow out Purdue. And then last, I'm going to do North Carolina, 6.5-point dogs over UCF. This line I'm not fairly confident in, but after all the bad publicity for North Carolina, the way they started their season, I think they can keep this one at least close.
Good picks. I like everybody's picks this week. Can I just really quick say, College Game Day going to Florida, Miami over any of the other games this week, an absolute abysmal decision. It just shows the SEC bias. I hate it. I hate it. Brendan, I thought you'd be a little more fired up about that. That's something that you would get really angry over.
I am a College Game Day knower. I try to always look, where's it going to go? Where's Big Noon Kickoff going to go? Yeah, that's frankly a miss. I've been trying to track, down the line. When could it, possibly be at Maryland? Where could it be at other games I'm going to be at? I'm heading down to the Georgia Ole Miss game, so I was thinking maybe they could get it, but they're probably going to go for Georgia, Alabama. But at this point, dude, who knows? That was a really bad decision.
It
There's always Indiana, so Illinois. Many facts. Oh, definitely should have been. I think what you hate to admit and you hate to see happening in this world is that it's very biased on the game that they're going to cover.
Contract. Yeah.
Right? Like, they could go wherever, right? They went to Williams College one time, I think, maybe against Amherst.
Yeah. I feel like they used to do that. They do that more in the past. Like, it's really started since they got rid of the rights
media deals and conference realignment.
Yeah, because that's just so stupid. Like, why are we going to see Florida, who stinks? I hate it. I hated it. Lee Corso might be washed and retired, but Game Day has fallen off now because of this. So, that's
when he was there, they would never have done this garbage. No, but you're right. Like, They were like, oh, let's pick an SEC game. We have the media rights. It's like, come on. Like, that's clearly not the best game of the weekend. It has really no implications. They're going to get blown out.
Yeah, it's terrible. That's my rant of the week. We'll turn to Brendan's rant of the week now. Terrific Terp.
You don't want to do Mike's rant of the week?
All I'll say is that, I haven't really noticed that Lee Corso isn't on the show anymore.
Okay.
His
All right.
exit came a couple years too late.
I'll give him his first love. I will do the terrific terp now before Mike says something too hot that my computer burns down. This week's terrific terp launched the pipeline of Australian women's lacrosse players to the NCAA and specifically Maryland. Sasha Newmarch was a key piece of Maryland's 7 straight titles in the 1990s. She contributed from 1995 to 1998, helping the midfield, winning 3 All-Americans during that time and won National Midfielder of the Year during her senior season. In her time with the Terps, she lost 4 total games. Truly an unbelievable run. Her lacrosse journey began when she was 6, way back in Australia, when she played for Glenelg Lacrosse Club, not to be confused with the area in Maryland with the same name. She started her career as a goalie when she was very young, and her dad would tape a pillow to her chest and give her an oversized helmet. She soon realized her true calling would be scoring rather than saving. From then on, she played on many teams in Australia, and in 1992, she traveled to the US with one of the Australian national teams. In fact, later on, when she traveled to the US again, she was 18, she was on the Australian team that played Team USA in College Park, and this was before she ever enrolled as a Terp. Newmarch and her teammate Sarah Forbes both learned about Maryland during that trip, and they were hooked. They both attended University of Maryland and were pivotal to the Terps' success. Newmarch bounced around various teams in the US and then played for the Australian national team some more when she returned in 2002, and she was also part of the 2005 Australian national team that beat the United States to win the World Cup. When her kids were old enough, she tapped into the coaching market, and as of 2025, she's the coach of the U16 Sixes teams with hopes of developing young talent for the upcoming Olympic Games that feature lacrosse. This week's Terrific Terp is one of the greatest midfielders in Maryland women's lacrosse history.
Good stuff from Brendan. We've always appreciated a good Terrific Terp. This was a big week for Maryland athletics, particularly Maryland football. I'm really excited to watch this game. I think this is one of the, honestly, just intrigue and what I don't know about a team. That's when I feel the most excited. I'm pumped to watch on Saturday. I think it's going to be a really interesting
Absolutely
game.
Huge game. Program defining, maybe.
Some are saying. You can come back to Under the Shell next week to get all your reaction. We'll have another great guest that week. For now, listen to this one. We appreciate your time. Check us out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your pods, and social media, wherever you go to get your feed. We appreciate you listening, and big game on Saturday. Tune in.
Guess what? You've got Under the Shell podcast. Nobody does it better.